Hey guys, it's IT Ops Guy. Well, I wanted to very quickly show you what the Microsoft SQL Server monitor looks like from Solarwinds. Now, this is a huge subject. It's not something I'm going to be able to show you in just a few minutes, but what I am going to be able to show you in just a few minutes is an idea of what you can monitor through Solarwinds using AppInsight for SQL. That is the monitor that they call it. And when you use that monitor, this is what it looks like. Now, I've got one SQL server in my little lab environment. It's called SQL 01. You can see that up here in the breadcrumbs, and you can see that Microsoft SQL Server is running on it. And we're monitoring that instance. It's just an express edition of SQL, so nothing special. It's got exactly 3 databases on it, which are the 3 that are needed for SolarWinds. So we've got Flow Storage, we've got Orion, and we've got Orion Log. Now, I said you need 3. You don't technically need 3. I think at this point in time, it's down to 2. Not everybody has Flow Storage installed, and so we do have it installed. We are going to play around with it a little bit, so I do have it there. But I wanted to show you this very first page is like an overall of system health, right? So everything from the databases gets calculated up and bubbled up, and then you get this summary page. And this summary page is telling you how SQL Server is running on your machine overall, right? So you can deep dive into each individual database. That is not a problem whatsoever. But for this purpose and for this particular page, we're looking at the overall health of SQL Server. We're looking at overall, with all the databases in mind, how much cache is used per minute? How many cache object counts are there? How many cache objects are in use? This again is overall. Now you could deep dive into each of the individual databases, get this information and figure out, okay, this particular database, database A, has of the 272 cache objects in use, it has 150 of them. Maybe you care, maybe you don't. Maybe for your environment, it's no big deal at all. But again, this is just a summary page. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this because it is useful to have that type of knowledge that this is just overall, right? So when you're looking at this, just know, okay, I'm looking at my overall SQL health. Now you may have one individual component that is contributing to the fact that your box is in warning. You can see 92% of the time my box is up, it's happy. But there's 8% of the time where it's unhappy. It's in a warning state. There's something about it that it doesn't like. And if I wanted to get more information on that, I certainly could. I could come up here and go into my events, load that up, say I am only interested in my SQL 01 server, and show me what's going on. And it'll tell me, okay, well, you've got this application called MS SQL Server on node 1 that's in warning. Why is it in warning? Well, there's a component called work files created per second that got into the warning threshold. And again, this is a lab environment, so maybe I care, maybe I don't. But I can come in here and look at these work files per second, and we can adjust this if needed. If I determine, you know what, we are within the threshold, so even here at 9, right, I'm getting warnings. Even down here in these low points, I'm getting warnings, but it's happening quite frequently. And the nice thing about SolarWinds is they give you some really good information about what all of this means. Now, because we are monitoring this environment at such a high rate, meaning we're pulling very, very quickly, it's causing this issue. And because I know about it and I'm expecting it, I want to modify this threshold. I don't want to see this alert. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to first take note at, what's that top value, right? And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to edit this application monitor. And what I'm interested in are work files, and I just use the search. It gets me right to where I want to go. And you can see where we're at, right? So anything greater than 10 is causing a warning. Anything greater than 20, it's calling it critical. So I'm going to override this. And now I can use the latest baseline data. That's the data that Solarwinds is aware about. And that will get you close-ish, right? It's still not going to get us where we want to be. And so I could say yes here, but instead I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify these values myself. So I'm going to say warn at 30, critical at 50. And let's go ahead and just submit that. And let's see, actually, now that we're here, were there any other components? We just see work files, work files, work files, work files. All right, so I think we're good. It's really just the work files that we're seeing. And now you can see this threshold has changed. We're up at the 30 mark is where we want to be. Now, we still have one here. If you look at this, the max work files was 35.04. So am I gonna, if I hit 35, I'm gonna get that warning again, but maybe that's okay. That was one outlier across a sea of right around, you know, call it what? 15, 15, 15. So 15 for me is the average. So if I hit 30, I do want to know about it. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it right where it's at. And you can see that warning threshold change. That yellow area is now where that threshold is. So if we hit 35 again, we're going to hit that warning. But let's go back just real quick and let's look at one of the individual databases that we have inside of Solarwinds. So we're going to go back to the summary page, and then we're going to take a look at the list of databases that we have. We're going to choose one, and we're going to dive deep into that database. So let's do that if Solarwinds decides to load in my little lab environment here. See if we can't get there quicker the long way. Or if it's just this page it doesn't want to load. Oh, there we go. Look, my second page won. Okay, so we've got a database here called Orion. This is the main database. You can see it is 1.36 gig. Transaction log size is 264 megabytes. Let's take a look. So we're diving into this particular database, and it's telling us where the files are located. It's telling us the transaction log size. It is, you know, restricted transaction log. It's telling us the disk I/O and the quantity of IOPS being used to support this database. Same is true for the transaction log. And then it's talking to us, you know, giving us little graphs about the quantity of transactions, the storage. All this stuff is great information, and you can dive into all of it. So you can see transactions per second. It's running almost 12 transactions a second. If I wanted to, again, I can dive deep into that. We do see this one period where the quantity of transactions was much higher. And so you can see here, you know, we hit 20.55 transactions. And chances are this is when Solarwinds summarized the data from the day before. Depending on your retention settings, there is a summarization that occurs of that data. So it doesn't take up way too much data on the disk. It allows you to keep data for longer, but you start to lose the detail, right? Like give me up to 5-minute detail for 7 days. Give me hourly detail for 30 days. Give me, you know, daily detail for 90 days. That's the kind of setup that a lot of organizations have because they want that retention, but they don't want to sacrifice a bunch of database space to do it. The retention settings, by the way, you can get in all settings. And if you come in here, and I believe it is, it's not that. It's a global thing. Here we go. So polling settings, right in here is going to be this stuff. So your default polling interval, you can see by default, it's set at 120 seconds. That is way stupid crazy. Most organizations are at, anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes. Yeah, 2 minutes, that's just crazy. SolarWinds server's working really hard. But as you get down here, this is where, you can set your retention, not detention, which is what I used to be in a lot as a kid, but your retention, so you can get your detailed stats, your hourly stats, your daily stats. How long do you want to keep all these things for? And so SolarWinds has a job that constantly is summarizing data into whatever these values are set at that particular day. So just keep that in mind. It's something to know. But let's get back to SQL Server. Again, a bunch of different items that you can look at and inspect. Let's go back one level. So here's all our databases, and actually here you go. It's a great thing, right? So our login failed for our SQL Server user, SolarWinds.service, for some reason, not sure why. This thing was running just fine. I didn't make any changes. I didn't do anything, but it looks like my SQL Server, for whatever reason, is not happy. And so, now obviously I'm going to take some time to try to figure out, okay, is this a polling issue? I'm polling it pretty often. So I'm going to go ahead and just click poll now. But while I'm waiting on that, I could probably just go and look at my SQL Server and see if anything crazy happened there. We can see it's been up for 15 hours. Let's just log in. The other thing that I like to do is I like to look at the event logs, right? So you're going to get a little bit of troubleshooting on this, and I told you it wouldn't end up being a short video. So let's look at the event viewer. Specifically, I'm interested in security. There we go. An account was logged off. That happened at 12:39:05, so that is just right now. So maybe my poll was actually successful. I don't see any failures in here at all. So I'm guessing it's just, we're trying to pull this node every 2 minutes to be in compliance with SolarWinds. And so it's pulling quite frequently, quite a bit, and chances are SolarWinds just might be overwhelmed. Let's go and take a look at this guy and see if it's any different now. All right, so we're still having a credential thing being shown here, but I have a feeling that'll be fixed in a polling event or two. But it does give us a good opportunity to talk about, that frequency in which we are polling. 120 seconds is nothing. Your box would be so overworked. If you know anything about WMI, you know that you can find out pretty much anything and everything about a box or the applications that are running on it, but it's not the fastest protocol in the world. In fact, there's so much data going back and forth that it needs a little bit of time to actually just sit and wait and get all that data. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and modify this application monitor. And so its polling frequency is actually set to 300 seconds, right? So that would be 5 minutes with a 1200 second timeout. So pretty generous timeout there in order to get all the information. So we really shouldn't have any problems. Let's go ahead and go back. And these are the kind of problems you get to deal with and you get to troubleshoot, right? Now, it doesn't mean that there's no data available whatsoever, even though at this very moment, for some reason, my SolarWinds account cannot log in. It doesn't mean I can't still go in here and get information about the database that happened in the past that I know about, right? So if we log in, we can look at all these different charts. They're just not green right now because we don't have any current information. But I can still dive into any of these components. So let's take a look at, here's a good one, percent log used. So you have kind of this sharp tooth pattern, right? And we can dive into this percent log used, and we can look at all the historical information that's available. In this case, I mean, not a ton, because we just kicked this server up last night, but there's still plenty of information here. You can still peruse it. You can still export it. You can still get information on it. And when SolarWinds is able to make a connection to my SQL server, I'll be okay. Now I could troubleshoot this further, but that's not why you're here. You're here to get an overview of SQL Server and the power that it has. And it is really, really good. It's unfortunate this happened at that time, but these things do happen. And I'm not going to stop the video to sit here and wait for that connection to be reestablished. I'm not going to stop it because it is good for you to have realistic expectations. This does happen. I've got SQL servers at my work that I can pull 92% of the time, but the other 8%, for whatever reason, they're just unknown. Now, we've actually tracked it down to, we know that the backups are running at that exact same time, and it's every single day, right? The backup is just scheduled. So we know there's going to be a small window where it's just simply not going to pull because the disk is already too busy, you know, and getting backed up, and there's just not enough IOPS left over for SolarWinds to pull the node. So you're going to find those environmental things that you need to look for, and if you can correlate, well, it happens every single day around this time, or it happens 3 times a week around this time. What else is happening 3 times a week around that time? Start looking at scheduled tasks. Start, you know, asking about backup. Start asking about summarization jobs. Start asking about environmental things that you can kind of point your finger to. Now, this is a brand new environment, so I can't point my finger to anything at the moment. But in the interest of your time, I wanted to make sure that you saw this, you saw what it can do, and I'll get this fixed, no problem. Maybe I'll make another video out of that. That'll be fun. So you guys stay tuned, and we'll chat with you later. Bye.